Hi guys, and welcome back to my top 100 horror films ranking. This is actually part 2 of this, so in the previous episode I went from 100th to 81st. You'll find that video in my rankings playlist. Today we will be going from 80th to 61st, and other than saying that, I don't think this video needs to have as big an introduction as I slapped on the front of the previous one, so in theory this new episode should be shorter, but we'll see how rambly I get with the movies. But just to quickly recap, at the end of the previous video, 28 weeks later came 81st. It's now time to find out which film just pipped it into 80th spot. At number 80 then, we have Horror in the High Desert 2. This series is sort of like if Blair Witch was set in the Arizona desert, except Horror in the High Desert is done in the mockumentary style, so it feels like a documentary about this guy who's gone missing in the desert somewhere and what happened to him. Maybe we'll find out, maybe we won't. I sort of enjoyed the first film, but I wouldn't say it was amazing until it gets right up close to the end. The last 10-15 minutes of the first one are just superb. Some incredible creepy scenes in the desert at night, and I sought out the second film quite quickly. But this sequel is where all this peaks for me, because this one is just more relentless from the off. There's so many great scenarios where people are just out amongst the tumbleweeds with their phones or their camcorders, and you don't know what the hell is going to pop out from anywhere. Third film's pretty solid as well. This is a series that doesn't really have any weak films. It's just all good all the way through, and there's even going to be a fourth one that's coming out next year. They're all done by the same guy, Dutch Mariak, something like that. I might have butchered his name. Sorry, just on the 1,000,000 to 1 chance he's watching, I do apologise for that, but your film's awesome, buddy. So do check these out if you like found footage and you've not gotten around to seeing any of these yet. At 79, we have The Burning. This came 32nd last time, so it's dropped a fairly hefty 47 places, mostly because I guess I just haven't seen the film in the last 5 years, so it's kind of faded from the forefront of my mind a little bit. I thought this would be one that I would rewatch quite a bit, actually, but I just haven't in recent times. But certainly when I bought the Blu-ray, I thought this was so good. I actually watched the commentary track straight afterwards as well. I mean, essentially the film is a Friday the 13th rip-off, but it's a damn good one. I mean, I'd say this is better than most Friday the 13th films. The villain is a guy called Cropsey. He's a burns victim, and he looks super cool in the very brief glimpses that we get of him. The place they found to film with this looks absolutely phenomenal as well. And overall, this is just a textbook example of how to write a slasher film. The way that the amount of kills just accelerates as you get into the second half of the film after a really good slow build-up. I just like that approach. And it's hard to predict who's going to live and die in this, because there are a hell of a lot of characters, but I think that works for this sort of movie. If you've just got like 7 characters in the film, then you look at them and you think, well, at least 6 of these are toast, right? But towards the start of this film, when there's like a massive dining hall with all these kids in it, I'm thinking, well, some of these have got to live. There's like 100 of them. And, you know, Cropsey's good, but he's not that good. And who can forget the classic kill scene in this film on the raft with the clippers? Surely one of the best kill scenes of all time, I will wager. At number 78, we have The Mummy, also known in my brain as the Brendan Fraser Mummy, although maybe I should call it the Rachel Weisz Mummy, because she is truly the person who livens up these films for me. If you're a fan of the Tom Cruise Mummy film, by the way, and you've been looking out to see where that film comes in my ranking, I'm sorry to inform you it hasn't quite made the cut. I do apologise, Mr. Cruise, but you know what? You are free to apply again in 5 years' time, and maybe I will reconsider. I can't promise I'll watch the film again as part of that reconsidering process, but I will reconsider briefly. As for the Brendan Fraser Mummy film, this came 15th when I did my list 5 years ago, so it's had a big drop of 63 places down to 78. And I think the main reason for that is that I'm just tending to give slightly less favour to horror films with a comedic edge this time. It's just the way that I seem to be doing it. Plus, I was slightly stung recently when I showed this film to my son, who's currently 14. So I've been looking for horror films to sort of get him into the genre, but slowly. I don't want to go too far too fast. I'm not just going to bung Terrifier on straight out of the gate. So I showed him the Brendan Fraser Mummy, and at the end of it, I asked him what he thought, and he just sort of turned to me and said, "It was all right, a bit silly though." Kids these days, they just grow up so fast compared to my generation. I used to just like the first of these, but over time I've even warmed up to the second film as well, and the third, even though it doesn't have Rachel Weisz in it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the return, because they're going to do a fourth film. Brendan Fraser's coming back, I think Rachel as well. So that could be fascinating, and I think when that happens I might go back and do a review series for this, because I haven't done one yet. And I might also consider doing a ranking that includes not just the Mummy films, but the Scorpion King spin-offs, because I've never checked those out. Do let me know in the comments what I can expect from the Scorpion King films. Am I just letting myself in for pain? Well, you know what? It wouldn't be the first time on this channel I have put myself through a lot of pain for the sake of a ranking, looking at you, Howling, and Children of the Corn. At number 77, we have a new entry called It Stains the Sands Red. I saw this on Shudder, I think, a couple of years ago. So the basic premise is that there's a zombie apocalypse happening. The outbreak has just started. We follow a young woman and her boyfriend as they're fleeing Las Vegas in a car, but then they break down. They haven't got very far at this point. I think you can still literally see Vegas in the background. Just as they're figuring out what to do, a zombie comes out of nowhere and kills the boyfriend. This isn't giving spoilers. This all happens in like the first 2 minutes of the movie. And in a panic, the woman flees into the desert and the zombie follows. And this is like the basic premise of the movie, a woman running away from one zombie in the desert. Now, given that this is more the Romero shambling sort of zombie rather than the running type, you'd think that it would be quite easy for the woman to get away. But it's actually harder than you would think, because she doesn't know what direction she's running in. You know, she's got very limited supplies, if any, from memory, and she needs to rest at certain points, whereas the zombie doesn't need to rest. So it's an incredible chase, if you like. And this is not what happens for the entire movie. The film eventually does progress into other things, but it's a very artistic film. I've never seen zombies done quite like this, in such a minimalist sort of way. And there are twists in the second half of the film, and I just really liked this. I got to the end and thought that was a bloody good new way to do this sort of thing. So this is highly recommended. If you've not seen this one before, I'd encourage you to check it out. At number 76, we have another new entry. This is The Gallows. It's a found footage film. It's set in a school, so one of the year groups are doing a play, which just happens to be about gallows and nooses, and somebody's been sentenced to death, presumably. But a small number of the cast don't actually want to be in the play. So one night they break into the school and bash up the set so that the play won't go ahead, or at least that's their intention. But they get trapped in the school by supernatural forces. All the doors get locked, and they've got to try and find a way out, but they're being picked off by ghosts or whatever it is. Now, this film, I admit it doesn't sound that amazing, but the atmosphere is absolutely on point. I thoroughly have a great time watching this. I've seen it multiple times. There's a girl with a weird name in it as well, something like Fifi. She's really good value. I liked her. The sequel is not as good. It's not found footage either, although I quite liked it, actually. I just don't think the second film will be to most people's liking, but certainly the first one is, I would say, one of the classics of the found footage genre. At number 75, we have The Strangers Prey at Night. I've become a big fan of this series in recent times, which is quite the turnaround, because I really hated the original film. I thought it was pants. But then I saw the second one, Strangers Prey at Night, and it was like, whoa, this is like completely different. This is actually awesome. So this is the one that's set in like a caravan park, and there's just the one family using the place. So they go into this apartment, they settle themselves down. and then the strangers turn up asking for Tamara, and suddenly the game is afoot again. I can't remember a single thing about this movie that I disliked. Like, the whole thing is just so well written. And the third act just totally goes for it. It doesn't worry about there being any other sequels. It just puts the foot to the floor and just, yeah, let's have a fantastic finale. And that's what it does. And even though this is my only Strangers film in this ranking, I really like the new reboot trilogy as well. I think they're much better films than people are giving them credit for. And I would encourage you to try them again, or maybe just watch them if you haven't yet seen them. Don't listen to the reviews. Chapter 2 especially, I thought was fantastic. And the only reason that Chapter 2 has not made it into my top 100 is that I think it suffers from a little bit of Empire Strikes Back syndrome. There's not really an ending to it. It's just kind of like, oh, to be continued in part 3. But once all 3 parts are out, and you can watch all 3 of them in just one long movie, I think it's going to be awesome. Even Halloween didn't have the balls to set all 3 of its new movies on the same night, but The Strangers does, and I really admire that. But Prey at Night is still the best for now. At number 74, we have Annabelle Creation. This is down 18 places from 56, so it hasn't had as big a fall as some of the other films we've been talking about. I think this film has been helped by the fact I watched it just this past summer. It is, for me, the best of the entire Conjuring universe, so obviously that means that we have no more Conjuring after this point, and we're only at 73, and this is one of my favourite franchises as well. I'll tell you a series that has no films in this top 100, and that's Insidious, and yet I'm a big fan of that. I've got all those films on Blu-ray, but I just couldn't pick out one of the 5 Insidious films that I thought should be in this list. Like, these 2 series, especially Conjuring and Insidious, they're so consistent with the quality, and yet they still struggle to produce those outright horror masterpieces that would do really well in a project like this. But it is what it is. Conjuring at least got a couple of films into the list. Insidious got none. Annabelle Creation, if you can't remember, it's the one where a bunch of orphaned girls go and stay at this random house in the sort of eastern part of California. It's quite a deserty sort of area that they're in. And the scares are plenty in this, whether it's from the scarecrow in the barn or Annabelle herself in the house. All the moments that involve the stair lift are damn freaky. And yeah, I think this is the high point of the franchise. And I really like Annabelle Comes Home as well. That's a film that probably didn't miss out on the top 100 by all that much. At number 73, we have The Zombie Diaries. This is down 24 places from the 49th placed finish it achieved last time. It's simply the passing of time that has led to the drop. My opinion on the movie hasn't changed. It's just, me watching more great horror movies as my life progresses. That's all it is. This is a British film. I often refer to it as the Pulp Fiction of zombie movies because there are like 3 or 4 self-contained tales in this, but they're all linked by the same characters, kind of, and they're played out of sequence as well. Really fascinating stuff. It's done in a really cool way. It's very low-key. There's no like massive action sequences in this. It's not World War Z. It's almost like the polar opposite, actually, but it feels more believable as a result. I watched this film and I genuinely feel like I'm watching what would happen if there was such an outbreak in the UK. Some great villains in this film. One in particular is just absolutely terrifying. There is a sequel which has a weird name, like World of the Dead, The Zombie Diaries 2, which is a strange way to do it. But that is also a really good film, actually. I could have included that one in the top 100 as well, potentially. So if you're going to check these out and you like the first one, don't forget to also watch the second one, because that's really good. It's a really good zombie 1-2 punch. At number 72, we have The Chernobyl Diaries, and I promise you, it's a complete coincidence that we've got these 2 films with the word diaries in the title side by side. As soon as I realised that I'd written both of them down together, pretty much, I thought, oh wow, that's random. But, when you do a list like this, you do end up with weird anomalies cropping up that are just kind of strange. This film is the pure definition of the word grower, because when I first saw it, 2009, I think, I thought it was kind of all right, and then I moved on. And then I randomly threw it on one night when I was bored and I was just scrolling through what was available. Watched it again, thought it was a lot better. I thought, actually, this is really good, And then a few years later, I bought the Blu-ray, and by this point, I was like, this is actually a really awesome film. I like it a lot. And now here we are talking about it as part of my top 100 horror films of all time. I think what's contributed towards my liking of it is the fact that it's set in Chernobyl. I've always been really fascinated by that incident and the fallout and stuff. Me, my wife, and my oldest son watched the HBO Chernobyl drama series that came out 2 or 3 years ago, and we all found that really interesting. And I've always fancied taking a stab at the Stalker video games that are set in Chernobyl. I just haven't quite gotten around to it at this point. There's so many different threats in this movie. There's the threat from the Ukrainian soldiers. We sort of know that they must be in the vicinity somewhere, and the characters do mention them at points. It's weird looking back on this film now, because when it came out, you've got these Ukrainian soldiers and they're like the enemy, whereas in 2025... obviously, Ukrainian soldiers are like these people that most of the world are getting behind, just really supporting in their battle against Russia and that invasion. But during this film, they are very much the enemy. And then there's a bear that shows up at one point. Just you see it scampering through the apartment block. I think it was a bear. And at times the characters see these like bald-headed people in the distance, and who the hell are they? And then there's the threat from the radiation. So there's a lot of different factors for the characters to consider in this movie if they're going to survive it. And I just find it extremely exciting. There's one character in it who's amazing. So the driver of the minibus who gets them to Chernobyl, he's so funny. He's this like local Ukrainian tour guide, and I just find him absolutely incredible all the time that he's on the screen. Great character, and a really underrated movie as well. At number 71, we have the original 47 Metres Down. This film has actually gone up 28 places from 99. So we were just talking about anomalies. Here's another one, because at the start of this 2025 list, I had 47 Metres Down Uncaged at 99th as a new entry. Well, in the previous list 5 years ago, the original film was at 99th, and now it's risen up to 71. I did not plan that. This is just another one of those random things that happened that I noticed. So the original film, it's about these two young women who go cage diving, but something goes wrong with the rope, I think, or the steel cable or whatever, and they end up trapped on the seabed with only a limited supply of air, and there's no way to get back up. So what they're going to do, we will find out. Really exciting film all the way through. There's just no respite. The danger is just constant. It's a ticking clock. They've only got so much air, and there are sharks nearby. I think my favourite moment is where one of the women swims out over this chasm. It's like an underwater cliff almost. When she goes over it, there's just this abyss in front of her, and God knows how far down that goes. And in that scene, I really felt the size of the ocean. I just felt the scope of it, and where she was, and the fact that she's surrounded by just this dark water on all sides. Really good stuff. I think the second film is the one to watch when you're just in the mood for like a slasher film underwater. But if I was going to put my snobby hat on for a moment, I'd say the first one is a better movie. Do you want a balloon? Do you want it? So it is a new entry coming in at number 70, although in the previous ranking 5 years ago, I did have both of the remake movies, but they are now gone, and I've brought the mini-series in, and I think the reason for that mainly is that I can watch this version in one night. Because it's only 3 hours long, I can just treat it as a movie. The remake films, as good as they are, and I do really like them a lot, I think they're about 4.5, maybe 5 hours if you sort of put them together, so it's difficult to watch those in one sitting. They are a little bit more dragged out, but in all honesty, I don't have that much of a preference between the original miniseries and the movies. I could have included all three of them in this ranking, and I would have been fine with that, I suppose, but I've decided to just include this just for the sake of having a little bit less repetition, I suppose. But I've got a longer history with the miniseries anyway. I saw it on TV in the 90s. I remember getting to that final scene of part one where Stan is in the bathroom, and I was like, whoa! And then the circus music came on, and I was in bits because I didn't know what happened in part two, and I knew I was going to have to wait another week, and I hadn't read the novel at this point. There was no internet back then to sort of go and cheat, if you like. The novel, by the way, is incredible. It is, for me, the very best Stephen King novel of all time, and that is high praise, given the body of work he's put out over the last 4, 5, 6 decades. At number 69, we have The Howling. This is technically a new entry, although I've watched this on and off going back like 30 years, so I just don't think this film was at the forefront of my mind last time I did the ranking, but it makes its entrance now. This is the only one of the 8 Howling films to have made my list, shock horror. Most of the sequels I wouldn't bother with, although I do like number 6, The Freaks, Howling 6, The Freaks. I think if they ever clean that film up, because it looks a bit messy at the moment, if they ever do like a proper Blu-ray restoration of that one, I'd watch that one again, but none of the others, apart from the original. So this one, it takes place at some kind of couples retreat health spa in the woods, and our 2 main characters go there, and next thing, it turns out that half the place are actually werewolves, and you get some really cool scenes, especially this one chase where this woman is running between cabins and she ends up falling foul of the werewolf. Although I do struggle to remember how the plot progresses in this film. It is structured in a weird kind of way. Like, I've seen the movie multiple times, and I'd struggle to write the story down on paper beyond what I've given you. Is this my favourite werewolf film of all time? I think so. I can't think of another one that is higher on the list than this. I know a lot of people like An American Werewolf in London. They'd probably prefer that one. But no. The Howling. That's the best, in my opinion. Number 68, we have Heretic. This is another new entry, although obviously it would be, given that it only came out last year. So we follow a couple of young women who are thinking about becoming nuns, but they're not nuns quite yet. So technically, I guess, they can still have sex, but they don't in this movie. Nah. But at the start, they're going around Colorado, knocking on people's doors, getting them to convert to the church. That's their hope anyway, although they're not having much luck this particular day that we're following them. But then they come to a rather large sort of house that Hugh Grant is living in, and it's never really addressed in this movie why there would be this wealthy Englishman just randomly living in the middle of Colorado. It's just completely taken as a normal thing, fair enough. But he invites these 2 women into his place, and they all sit down and start talking about religion, and it's a fascinating discussion that they have. Even for someone like me, who has no real interest in the church, I was captivated. But there's definitely something shifty about this guy, and the 2 girls start to pick up on it, but very slowly. And I'm not going to spoil any more of the movie for you. Just watch it. Just take a chance on this one. Throw it on. One of the most original horror movies I've seen in the last few years. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's got a great villain. Hugh Grant, I absolutely forgive you for all that guff you've made over the years. Things like Love Actually, This is how to redeem yourself, this. So please do more like this. This is really great. At number 67, we have Resident Evil Afterlife. This has plummeted 37 places from 30th. When I did my previous list, there were 3 Resident Evil movies in the top 100, and 2 of those were in the top 30. This time around, there's just 1 Resi movie, and it's only come 67th. So this franchise has taken some hits this time around. But Afterlife, for me, is the one movie in this series which is just above all the rest. It's got a great soundtrack. Like, I've got this music playlist that I listen to quite regularly when I'm out and about, and there are 2 tracks from this movie that are on that playlist. But the film itself is a really good idea what they've done here. So It's mostly set in a prison in LA, but it's such a good location for horror, and specifically a zombie apocalypse. There's like zombies surrounding the fences, and there's this random 10-foot tall axe man that turns up at one point, and you never find out what this monster is, if you can call it a monster, or where it came from. It just appears in the middle of the zombies, gets itself in somehow, and then there's a fight scene. But I love the fact that that's not explained, it's just something that happens. And I love Albert Wesker in this film, brilliantly played by Sean Roberts. His portrayal is just amazing. I think some people will find it too silly what happens at the end of this. Like, Wesker's, he's almost like teleporting around the room. You can see the blur of him just moving around. He's dodging bullets like the Matrix. But it's so much fun. I'm just grinning from ear to ear throughout all this. I just love this film, even though maybe it's not normally the exact sort of horror that I would look to put on of an evening. It's definitely more action horror. Maybe there's not even a scary scene in this film, but it's just so good to watch. It's so enjoyable. So it has now overtaken Resident Evil Apocalypse as my favourite Resident Evil movie, and it may remain so until finally we get a decent adaptation of the original Resi game. And no, I do not count Welcome to Raccoon City. It didn't do it properly. It adapted 2 movies at the same time. No good. But for now, yeah, Afterlife. It's great. Number 66, we have Cloverfield. This is down 28 places from 38. So this is about a bunch of people who go to a party in Manhattan, but suddenly outside some kind of Godzilla type creature has turned up and is fighting the army. So there's like an emergency evacuation. There are just hundreds of people, probably thousands actually, trying to get out of New York. And we follow a select little gang as they form their own exit strategy. I think they try and use the underground subway to get out, but it's genuinely scary, this film, because you've no idea what the monster is really. You don't get a massive look at it in the early stages, and it's unclear if there's more than one of them. We don't know if the army is going to be a threat to our characters as well, so it's all kind of up in the air as to what will happen and who will survive, and you're just along on this ride and until it comes to a close. It's really good. I've not seen the sequel, 10 Cloverfield Lane. I've heard that it takes place in a bunker and is just nothing like the original, but do let me know in the comments if that's worth seeing. And I believe there's a third film that is technically part of the same universe, but is not really like the first film either. I'd only really want to see any more of these if I'm going to be getting a similar experience to what Cloverfield gave me. I'm not really that bothered about related films that are just nothing like what Cloverfield was, right? But certainly this original, I wouldn't quite call it a classic at this point. I think it's only been out like 10 or 15 years, but it's damn good. Number 65 is Cold Ground, a new entry. This did very well when I did my top 25 found footage movies ranking about a year or two ago. So this takes place in Europe. I'm tempted to say Austria or Switzerland because the film takes place in the snowy mountains, but another side of my brain is telling me it might be France, so I'm not sure on that. I think it has mostly French characters in it. Can't remember. But essentially, there's a group of scientists who are very concerned because they've lost contact with an outpost high up in the mountains. So they launch this rescue expedition. It's going to take them a few days to traipse up there, and it's freezing. There's snow everywhere. It's really cold. Even before the horror comes along in this film, the characters having a rough ride. You can see them in their tent at night. They're just shivering away, and this one guy passes out little shots of bourbon or something just so they can warm their blood up a little bit. I'm not going to tell you what the threat is here, whether it's monsters or killers, and it's not like the title of the film gives it away either. Just take a gamble on this one and discover the secret delights of the film yourself, and I think you will have a very good time. The final half an hour of this is absolutely relentless, and I think it's just a really good, mostly unseen, I imagine, little found footage horror movie. At number 64, we have Prometheus. This is technically a new entry, although I definitely would have seen this at the time that I did my previous ranking. I just didn't quite include it. But I think what has really pushed the film forwards in the intervening years is the arrival of the 4K. I don't buy a lot of 4Ks as a general rule, but Prometheus is easily the best I've seen on that format. It just makes this film look absolutely incredibly stunning. And it was already a visually appealing movie in the first place. I do think the critics have really kind of undersold this movie over the years. I think it's a lot better than it gets credit for. I hear these people online say things like, it's not really a proper Alien film. The alien at the end feels like fan service. But when you get to a film like Alien Romulus, people are like, it just feels like every other Alien film I've ever seen. It's like, well, which is it? But there's so many aspects to Prometheus that I really love, from the abortion scene, which is so exciting, to the aliens and the engineer having a fight. That's just so icky and cool. The spaceship chasing after Charlize Theron. Is she a robot? Is she not? We never quite find out. And I like that mystery element to that. I like the arrival of the black goo and how that affects the mythology and stuff. And yeah, this movie sort of answers a few things that you might have in your head about what comes along before Alien, but it sets up a few other mysteries as well. It's just a shame that this little prequel trilogy never got finished, because Covenant, the end of that movie didn't feel like the end of this story. So it's a shame that there wasn't another one. And by the way, Covenant has not made my list, but Prometheus really needs to rise up in people's minds, I think. I think it's so much better than what people think. You have to tell them, Paul! If you don't recognise that quote, you've probably not seen this movie. The Curse of Frankenstein is pretty much where it all began for Hammer, because even though they'd made films before this was the one, I think, that really cemented what their intentions were for like the decade and a half that would follow. So there were 7 Frankenstein films that Hammer did. This was the first, still the best. So we got Peter Cushing playing Frankenstein, and along with his friend Paul, they want to like stitch body parts together to create a new man, but there comes a point where it just gets a bit too much and Paul pulls out, but stubbornly Frankenstein just persists, even though it costs him so much of his life, his friends, his fiancée, his sanity. He has to start murdering people just to be able to keep up with the body parts that he needs, and it just goes on and on. A great character arc in this film, and it all culminates in this exciting fight up on the battlements, and I'm really sad by the end of this film as well. Great soundtrack as well. This is just an absolute Stonewall classic for me, and I'm happy to finally put it into my top 100 as a new entry, even though I first saw it back in the 90s, about 30 years ago on TV. At number 62, we have REC. So this was on my list last time at number 57. It's only dropped 5 places. In a ranking where so many films that charted last time have taken massive tumbles to make way for new movies, REC has stubbornly dug its heels in and only fallen by 5. So I saw the quarantine version of this first, the American one in other words, and then I watched the Spanish one a couple of years further on. There's not much difference between the two. They're basically identical. There are a few subtle differences between the films, but comparing them is a bit like comparing 2 of the roots in an early Resident Evil game. That there are little differences, but they're mostly the same experience. The reason why I'm putting REC into the list, both this time and the previous time, is that it was simply the film that came first. I feel like it deserves its spot more than Quarantine. But this film is great. Watching all these people trapped in an apartment block, and then the zombie outbreak happens, and there's all these cool chases up and down the stairs, and nobody knows what the hell is going on. There's so much adrenaline to this film. Once it really gets going, it never stops. And the finale in the apartment, the top apartment, surely one of the best endings to any horror film ever. It's just so great. REC 2 is worth seeing as well. It takes place on the same night as the original. You could almost watch REC 1 and 2 as like one big long supercut film if you were of a mind to. REC 3 Genesis is a slightly different tone. It's set at a wedding. It feels very different to the first 2, but it is really good. So I'd say the first 3 RECs are awesome, and then the 4th one kind of loses its way and its budget by the looks of it by that point. I don't really bother with Quarantine 1 anymore, but Quarantine 2 is worth seeing because it's its own movie. It's set at an airport. It's a new story. It's not copying Rec 2 in the same way that Quarantine copied Rec. Out of all of these films, though, there's only the original Rec which has made this list and the previous one. So that's why I'm talking about all the other films right now, because we're not going to be covering this series anymore in this ranking. And finally, today at number 61, we have Terrifier 3. I never used to get on with this franchise and its character. At least back when the first movie came out, it was just a bit too extreme for me. The film itself wasn't bad, but some of the kills were just so hard to digest. Like, my stomach was just turning over. I'm thinking mainly of the saw down the crotch. Like, that is just one of the most horrific things I've ever had to endure watching a movie, and I'm sort of afraid to watch that first Terrifier movie again, quite frankly. But 2 and 3, I think, are much better made movies. They've clearly got more money behind them, and I think the writer, director behind these, he's just got so much more confidence with what he's doing by the time he gets to 2 and 3. This third one, it was the first one I saw at the cinema. I loved the Christmas theme. There are little moments of humour in all the right places, and some great memorable kills as well, like the chainsaw and the showers and other ones as well. And at times it's genuinely quite creepy and scary, like when Art is just randomly going on the subway and various other moments. I've really come around to this whole concept and the slightly more extreme gore than what you would get in other slasher films. I am eagerly awaiting the fourth one, so we'll see what happens with that. I believe it's going to be the climax of the series, so we'll see. But yeah, Terrifier 3, I think, is a good way for us to round out today's video, so I will leave it there. And I guess I'll wish you all a Terrifier Christmas, and hopefully I will be back before Christmas to carry on with the rankings, where we will venture into the top 60. But for now, cheerio, bye-bye.